Well, all right. Can you all hear me?
Mhm.
Yes? All right.
All right.
Well, welcome to Life Notes for Professional Musicians presented by the Music Stand. I'm Arlington Jones, along with my wife, Hope Jones. We have musician Caleb McCampbell on with us, as well with President and CEO of APAA, Joe Powell. Well, thank you all for being on with us today.
Yeah.
We want to start the discussion about wellness and recovery for professional musicians. And I'd like to start with, I guess, talking about we can identify some challenges that things that challenge a musician's wellness. Um, if you aren't in the music industry or in show business, it may be some things that you don't realize are even going on. But I think things that challenge a musician's wellness. One thing is that the lifestyle requires long nights, late nights. Sometimes you have to work a lot of gigs or a lot of jobs to make ends meet. So then you have a lack of sleep. Sometimes it's hard. It's a challenge to eat well, and the demanding hours and travel schedule can be taxing. And so sometimes we find it's hard, for us to cope and stay awake, or it could lead to substance use and disorders, other things. I've also found that a lot of times we deal with things in isolation. I call it, we kind of put ourselves on an island and we aren't open, and so we think we're the only ones dealing with it. And so I think a lot of times musicians, we don't even talk about our problems out loud, and then something traumatic may happen where then the general public will get privy to things that were going on in someone's life. Also, I thought another thing is performance related stress or anxiety as well, that sometimes we deal with that as well. A lot of times just dealing with professional and personal relationships. So Caleb, I was going to ask you, you want to list maybe one thing that you see as a challenge to a musician's wellness? What do you think?
Um, I I think honestly the kind of the nature of the history of the music business, and kind of just being honest, how sometimes it can be a little corrupt, music business. So sometimes, depending on what section you're working in, depending upon the situation and the circumstances, sometimes just dealing, after dealing with instances of um, you people not handling the funds right, or just kind of things that you can run into when it comes to, like, running into this handling with maybe
Yes.
whoever you're dealing with. After dealing with things like that several different times, avoid it, and you live and learn. But I think that a lot of times that can really deter people, and it can really get in your head and feel like, man, am I ever going to be able to these challenges? You know?
Yes, yes, I agree. I had on my list, you know, that inequality. I was gonna say, and then to me, that what you're talking about, STEM, it kind of all goes together, because there can be, disappointments of the way that your career is going. There could be a lot of reasons why that could happen, but one of the things is that if you felt like you've been done wrong, I should definitely say that, to me, financial pressures and obligations, because especially like if you've been done wrong or whatever, or a lot of times, even if you're on a great tour, it only lasts for so long. You don't do one tour for your entire lifetime. So even if it's okay for that one tour, but then when it's over, then what are you going to do? So there's always those times of, the work comes kind of in waves, and then there's times where you have downtime. It's not like other jobs where you just go to a job every day and you get your paycheck on the 1st and the 15th. And so a lot of times, there's still those feelings of the unpredictability of how your finance is going to come in and how the jobs come in and different things like that as well. Um, yeah, anybody else have anything else they want to say? A list, because the list can be very long, but
Yeah. 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 I was thinking that since I'm married to a musician, I get to see firsthand, quite a bit of what goes on, in the mind of a musician. And I know that the pressure, yes, is very difficult. You mentioned long hours, because with wellness, we're talking about the physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. It's everything. And so just even having to, work late, those long days and late nights, sometimes it's hard to, get a good meal. And, like you said, sometimes that's very difficult. And that, even just being creative, it's like, continue to stay creative during those times when you kind of tired. A musician usually, goes from one source, one gig to another. And I know that it's hard to rest. So then, with that in mind, that part to me can also make it, when it's time to be creative, it can make it difficult, to even be creative because you're just so tired and so worn out. So being able to figure out how to maneuver and manage, how do I deal with the stress part of it? How do I deal with being tired and making sure that I do get rest? Because I know, because with you, Arlington, we talk about making sure you get rest, so that you can be prepared and be productive, so that you can be emotionally prepared for all the things that you have to do. So I know that is a big deal.
Yeah. And I'll admit, through the years, we've been married a long time now, and I'm still learning every day. But I realized that one thing I had listed was unresolved trauma from life
Yes.
experiences.
Right.
And I kind of, as life kind of has been living life, I realized even, the way that I were treating my wife and kids and different things that, I had to adjust sometimes because I was treating them a certain way and it didn't have anything to do with them, but I was dealing with, personal stuff that all of the things that we listed, dealing with those things, it was coming out, in a negative way by treating the people that I love, that are closest to me, and I love the most. That treating them bad because it was coming out in a negative way, because I wasn't, there were times in my life where I wasn't really dealing with, what was really bothering me, so just living life and then, realizing that I had to, make some adjustments and kind of deal with some of the things that trauma, whatever it was that I was, that I was dealing with.
Yeah.
So, we're going to end with some ways that we can address these things and ways that we can help, because really, the whole thing that we're about and what the organization, the Music Stand is that we're here to help and we want to help. And I feel like the more we kind of talk about these things and bring it to light and people can kind of relate to it, that there is help. And so we want to make sure that that we make that clear and that's available. And so one of the things I'm excited about is Joe Powell has an amazing story and does some really great work with his organization. And so we wanted to kind of all of us come on and kind of discuss with him and allow him a chance to tell his story and kind of tell us about the amazing things that has happened in his life. So Joe.
Yes. Joe Powell here. Thank you, Arlington. Great to see Mrs. Jones here and Caleb. It's an honor to be with y'all, man. And you just hit on some great things, that we've talked about as far as how do you, some of that we call even compassion fatigue that you can get, you know what I mean? Because you're doing so much, you know what I mean? And you're so busy and, and how to really just keep up to whether that same perfectionism even people can get into with musicians. I got to do it right all the time, you know. But yeah, taking care of yourself is so important. But I want to, again, my name is Joe Powell, and I'm a young person, I say, in long-term recovery. And what that means is that I haven't had a drink of alcohol now in 34 years, October the 8th, 1988. And it's only because of long-term recovery that I'm able to be a father today and a husband today and a Christian today, a lifelong learner today, a servant leader today.
Yeah.
It's only because of long-term recovery that I'm able to be the president and CEO of APAA, the Association of Persons Affected by Addiction, here in Dallas now for 24 years. And so I am excited. I do want to share some slides with everyone to get into my story, if that's okay. Let's do this. Okay. All right. All right. Let's get right to it. All right. Okay. So I again mentioned Joe Powell as the president and CEO of Apple, but also Apple. We always have to have a mission. What is our mission? And our mission is to educate all segments of the community, including the music industry and the performance industry, entertainment industry, about the nature of addiction and mental health recovery, and provide recovery support services to individuals, our families, and to our community. Right. The one slide that I have here is the only problem slide here. The rest of my slides is all about recovery and myself, but just to show that what happened to me as well as so many others when it comes to addiction. This is the definition. The definition of addiction is a pathological. That means we actually cut a path, right, when we take our first substance use, whether it's marijuana, alcohol, any other drug, but we create this relationship with this drug from the first thought with any mood altering matter of fact substance, even a behavior as well as relationship that we use to medicate trauma, like Arlington was saying, and also to medicate feelings and medicate life situations. And ultimately they cause life-threatening threatening consequences. So this is something that's serious here. It includes mental health challenges, right, which is in the brain. All this happens in the brain. So the Powell brothers, here I am right here, and this is the Ebony magazine. And the Ebony magazine put out said that the young Powells make early fame, right, and on television. And this is the Ted Mack Amateur Hour, which we're going to look at here in a second. But if you notice here at the bottom, it does says that Tommy Powell is 8, and William was 7, and Lovey Joe, that's me, was 4. 4 years old is when I was on television. Matter of fact, when I was born, my mother had 7 boys and 1 girl, but the first 3, that's the first 3 right here that you're looking at, Tom, Bill, and Joe, right? But when I was born, I came out and I said, Showtime. As soon as I came out, I was ready to go on the stage. And you see, at 4 years old, I was on television, right? And so this is right here, just a copy of the Ebony magazine that was put out. And you see it says May 1956. I know I'm a young man, right? But I was, of course, born in 51. But this is the Ebony magazine. You see that Hazel Scott Powell, she says that I found God in show business, right? And this is Ebony magazine that the Powell brothers was in. Here we are, there's another pictures. There was 3 pages. I'm just going to show just these 2 shots here. But I was at 4 years old. I wasn't even ready. I wasn't ready to even spin a tray. You know what I mean? In show business, right? Being in show business, and like my 2 brothers, I wanted to spin the tray, but I wasn't ready yet. So I did perform at 4 years old. And we was on Ted Mack 3 times because and he wanted us to come back. Gladys Knight from Gladys Knight and the Pips, she was on there 4 years before we was on there. Gladys Knight was on, and she talks about that, her being on the Ted Mack Amateur Hour show. So let's take a quick shot. What does that look like, right, as far as the Ted Mack Amateur Hour show?
Here are 3 tap dancing brothers. Thomas is 12, William is 11, and Joseph is 8. The Powell brothers. Well, we really got a family over there. Any more Powells at home?
Yeah, altogether 6 boys and 1 girl.
Uh-huh. That's fine. Who taught you to dance?
My father. He been on the amateur hour a long time ago with the Hot Hill Boys.
Is that right? Well, that's wonderful. What else about you? What's your daddy doing now?
He worked at school, the Board of Education.
Uh-huh. What do you want to do when you grow up?
I'm going to be an artist.
An artist, uh-huh. How about you?
I want to be a judge.
A judge? And you?
I want to be in show business.
Well, we really got it made here tonight, haven't we? An artist in show business and a judge, huh? All right, let's start out with a little dancing before we accomplish those other things. Going to twirl those things, are you?
Yes.
Okay, here they go, the Powell brothers.
Mhm. So that was the Powell brothers. I hope you enjoyed that. And that song was Chinatown. It was the name of that song, and that was big bands. Of course, many of the big bands did that. But here you have a picture of the Powell family right here. And this is my mother and my father, and my youngest brother wasn't born yet, Philip Powell. But here you see, and my only sister there. But you're talking about a family growing up with an alcoholic father, and that was pretty tough. When you talk about trauma and drama in the family, and what was going on inside the house, people didn't see outside. And the safest place for me was, guess what? Was on stage. When I was on stage, that was the safest place for me. When we was entertaining in front of people, right? And I was the highlight. The Powell brothers was it, because when we went home, right? And at this time, remember, civil rights movement was going on in the 50s and 60s. And so for the next 15 years, we danced throughout New York City on stage. Right. And so speaking of the family, this is right here, this talks a little bit about, and I'm not going to go through all of this, but it's talking about how the family is affected by addiction and mental health challenges, really, too. Right. So again, even though we develop this first sense of who we are, we think we know who we are, right? And how the world works, right? And how do we fit in it, right? But again, this family, and then of course, and once we go home, we move from being covered by our family, by our mom and our dad, hopefully our dad, but, and hopefully our mother. Yeah, but we are God, we are definitely covered by God for sure. But again, the addicted family, it comes through as a whole lot of challenges with the addicted family, and families would have mental health challenges. But we also become uncovered, And so here, me and my brothers and my dad here, just a good quick shot of them. But here's my father here on the chairs. Look where he's at. His feet is on the top of the chairs, right? And he gets up there, and then he takes the top hat off, twirl the hat on one end, switch his hands and twirl the hat on the other, and throw the hat up in the air, dive into a split between the chairs, and catches the hat on his head. Bam! And he did that drunk for many years, and of course he did it. We want up as sober as possible. But, my dad, of course, his alcoholism progressed too, even in the entertainment world, right? But we had to see that. And this is what, his group was called Hat, Cane, and Trey for many years before we was even born. He did that with two other guys that did Hat, Cane, and Trey, similar to the Nicholas brothers, Berry brothers, and the Hines brothers. It's just a quick shot of the Powell brothers, even at the Playboy Club, places where we shouldn't even been entertaining at a certain age, right? Because we danced at nightclubs on 125th Street in Harlem. I'm born in Harlem Hospital in New York, baptized by Adam Clayton Powell. Adam Clayton Powell was, of course, not only the minister of the largest African American church, back in those years, but also he became a congressman, right, for District 7 in Harlem, New York City. But here, when we talk about trauma and we talk about adverse childhood experiences, what happens to us? It's not what's wrong with us, but what happened to us, right? To where a lot of this happens. Even though we are talented musicians, we're talented artists, right? But again, we still have to come through the community environments, the family environments, right? And then what happens there? A lot of course, incarceration, divorce, etc., and mental health challenges comes from these traumatic events here, including trauma, discrimination, etc. The healing power of music, I'm not going to go into all of that, it's very important when we look at how does music really carry us throughout whole lot of this right here when we talking about as far as overdoses and the pandemics and what happens, you know what I mean, to African Americans, which is highest, you know what I mean, when we're talking about physical and medical challenges, not only just mental health and addiction, but also with our physical, right? Suicide rates, you know what I mean, rose really large when it comes to this country in the last 20 to 2021, the last couple of years. So this is it's fatal overdoses, of course. 60% now African Americans is largest in overdoses, right? So when we look at musicians, right, also how it's very high rates of musicians that have mental health challenges and addiction. But we want to move toward recovery and wellness. And what does that mean, even with the music carrying us, and how we must, of course, increase our emotional expression. How do we express ourselves? Most musicians and dancers, right, and artists express themselves in their art, right? And we know that, right? But also we know that we all sometimes need to take a vacation from that art too, right? Because it becomes work if it is work. But also, you know, I mean, it's helpful to know that it's healthy to have healthy pleasures. I don't have the addiction pleasures that I used that I had for many years. Of course, for myself, you know, using heroin, and you know, after I finished high school, and I couldn't stop using heroin, and I enlisted to go to Vietnam because I saw on television that they was dying from heroin in Vietnam. And my story, of course, was also that's a suicide mission that I was on because I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know where to stop it. There was no treatment around me. There was nobody around me that was providing any kind of support, healthy support. So like this right here that we seeing in front of us. But you know, but the music still carried me. I mean, Wes Montgomery, you know, Count Basie, you know, you name it, all of the movie, the big bands that still carried me, even though I was using in my own mental health challenges of PTSD, I always say, because of the post-traumatic trauma disorder from all of the trauma experiencing. But again, increase in creativity though, as you know, when we move in music, and how does music still carry us today? Now, in a sober way and in a healthy way, this slide here of course, is very relevant. But when we're talking about as far as using and having a challenge with mental health and also a challenge with addictions, of course, then we do still need to seek treatment and we need to seek support. And for me, even though, you know, when I enlisted to go to Vietnam and God said, you know what, no, you can't get away that easy. You haven't even met Arlington and Hope Jones yet. You haven't met Cleve yet. You know, you got a long way to go. And of course, you know, I went in when I was 19 years old. But the thing is that, you know, God took care of me and I was able to finish and get my term in the military and be honorably discharged. The music, though, again, continued for me to be a healthy pleasure and a priority also in my life, right? Increased those connections when I did get sober, you know what I mean? Increase the support that I had, increase my focus on who I am, you know, and what is it that I provide, you know what I mean, as a pain relief, as a pain relief. Here's a picture of me in the military when I went in the military, which was really fun. It was great to really to meet a lot of people on the same mission, right? And to really want to fight for the country. And that was excitement for me. The recovery part for me, though, after I did get clean and sober, I was able to get out of the military, you know, and I came to Texas after I left New York, after I got out of the military. I didn't want to go back to the same geographical location. So I decided that I wanted to leave town, and I got into a program called HARU, which is Harlem Youth Unlimited. And they was the ones that said, anybody want to go to Waco, Texas and take any trade you want to take? And I said, yeah, I heard and raised my hand. And I went to TSTI, which is Texas Technical Institute for Air Conditioning and Refrigeration, and back in 1973. And on the way to Texas, before I left New York, I bought me 2 methadone pills on the street of New York. And I prayed about it, but I also took those 2 pills. It took 2 days to get from New York City to Waco, Texas on a local bus, you know, Greyhound local bus. And I detoxed myself from heroin to all the way to Texas and have not picked up any heroin or any substance like that, any opiates or cocaine or any of that since then, in January of 1973. But I continued to drink till 1988. And in 1988 is when I went into some rooms, and it was a spiritual program. And they have God is all over the place. Christ is not listed, Jesus is not listed, but God is listed, right? And because it was a spiritual program. Anyway, he told me in here, you got to get a sponsor. You got to get someone to support you and to take you through the steps. And that's when I met Dr. Lewis E. Deere. And Dr. Deere was a psychiatrist. And I didn't know that he was a psychiatrist. Excuse me. When I asked him to be my sponsor, they told me you got to get a sponsor. I asked him to be my sponsor, and that was the beginning of a whole new life for me when I asked for help, because I had never asked for it. I don't even trust nobody. Who do I trust? You know, I don't even trust my own family or trust other peers, especially when you have an addiction. Who's going to really carry me through this? Only one that was carrying me through was my music, right? The jazz, R&B, the gospel music that I listened to, all of that was what I used, you know what I mean, to really to stay as healthy as I could, you know. But when I got into recovery, and then the next thing I know, with Dr. Deere, you know, and in 1998 is when the federal government, and I had got sober in 88. And in 98, 10 years later, is when the federal government put out a first request for proposals for people in recovery to help the government to move our country towards health, wellness, and recovery. And that's when Dr. Clark, who was over the Center for Substance Abuse Treatment, he said, you know what? Only 10% of the country is going to treatment in the United States. 10%, 90% of the country that do have addictions and mental health challenges are not seeking help. Right. And so that's when they say, well, don't people recover? Let's bring them to the table. Why are they not here at the table? And that's when they put out the first request for proposals for recovery organizations, and APAA was born. And so the community came together, right? And we formed the Association of Persons Affected by Addiction, which still is 24 years old now, going on 25 years next year. And we was able to really provide recovery support in our community, and working with the government, having those federal grants right there. Now, this is the definition of recovery that the government also asked us to put a definition of recovery. This is what we came up with. Recovery is a process of change. It is about changing, right? We can't stay the same if we still haven't. Remember, if nothing changes, nothing changes, right? So recovery is a process of change in which individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach our full potential, right? And with that is, where does it happen? In our health, our home, in our purpose, and in the community. Those are the 4 areas where recovery has to happen, right? Very important. And again, everybody with your playlist as far as music, how does music play a serious part, and how, especially with our pleasure and our power and our peace, how do we have peace? Remember that pathological relationship that we've cut in our brain, right, for our health has to be prioritized, right? And a playlist is very important to you. Whatever genre that you listen to, that is so important right here. Here's just what we formed with the federal government, that there's many rhythms of recovery, right? But we also know that this is the 8 dimensions of wellness right here too. When we look at and we talked about that earlier, and Hope, matter of fact, mentioned it, how it is emotional, and it's intellectual, it's physical, right? It's spiritual, it's social, right? Financial and environment, all areas of our life, right? And we want those rhythms of recovery in those rhythms. There's the NAMI group, which is the National Alliance of Mental Illness. This is, of course, is a resource that's in our community. I started because of my own family with mental health challenges in my family, ranging all the way from schizophrenia, bipolar, depression, right? In our family, along with addictions, right? That I had to start the first African-American NAMI group in the state of Texas. At that time, it was only 7 African-American NAMIs in the United States. Very important. Here's the Dr. Lewis E. Deere, which I was telling you about, my sponsor. He passed a few years ago. This is his wife right there with the pink on, and her son Lewis. And then these are other advocates you see there, and including Congresswoman Tony Rose, and our chairman of our board, Clifton Miller, of course, and Sonia Gaines, commissioner, the executive commissioner for Health and Human Services with Noah Abdenol. Just to finish up, I want to just show you just a couple of pictures here. Again, just people here. These are psychiatrists in the middle. This is the first African-American psychiatrist that was over the American Psychiatric Association, the oldest behavioral health organization in the country. And so you have all of these social workers, and of course, Dr. King Davis, and all of these are friends of mine. And this was at the awards that myself and Alpha Stewart, psychiatrist, we received for the African American Family Conference in Austin, Texas, just in 2020. This is right here in the back of APAA. Excuse me. This is in the back of APAA, the Association of Persons Affected by Addiction, at 3116 Martin Luther King Drive in Dallas, Texas, right? And right in the back, this is just a leadership conference that I held. And these are all people are in recovery all across the United States that actually have recovery organizations, mental health and addiction recovery organization. And then you have federal government employees there also that's in recovery, and Bill White and others. This is just a menu of services that APAA do provide right there at 3116 Martin Luther King, right? And also we do a lot of course, virtual recovery and remote recovery, including a chat that we have down for, just like for the music stand and musicians, so they can call and get support. But also there's many other resources that we're going to provide to you later. This is the Big Texas Rally for Recovery that I hosted, and this is when the 3,500 people that we walked across the bridge downtown Dallas, right? And then that's it. And my name again is Joe Powell, and I am a person in long-term recovery, and just glad to be here with you. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here.
All right, that's great. Man, thank you so much, Joe. Man, I'm so happy that you brought the videos too. That was wonderful. I love it. I love it. I love it. So, one thing that hit me that really stuck with me, Joe, was that in your slide presentation, you were showing how music can actually really be a blessing, how people can use it, to enrich their lives. And so it hit me is that, Caleb and I know, share that in common. We've been friends for many years, and we've had many conversations about, for us, our sole purpose, God has created us to be a blessing and to use us as a vehicle to be able to bless other people. And the thing that's amazing is that, why we came on today is that it occurred to me during listening to your story, Joe, and everything, is that we're here also because we want the people that are creating the music or the entertainment that is blessing the masses. We want them to be whole. About musicians, I'd like to call it the complete musician, because like you said, Joe, we're it's great on stage and we're clicking on all cylinders, but when we leave the stage, to also be that as strong and whole and be clicking on all cylinders. And so what we want to bring home today is that there's help. We don't want anybody dealing with whatever you're dealing with in isolation, whether it's wellness or if you need help with recovery. That we do not want we want you to know that there's help available. And so, as Joe mentioned, Hope and I are so thankful to be able to get to know him and to been in conversation with him through a couple of months now, and really coming together, partnering together to show that there's help and to be able to be here for help. And so we're set up where you can go to the musicstand.org, and there are links that can take you, like Joe mentioned, the chat line. There's a link that you can chat, but it can connect you with his organization, APAA, and or if we find that we just need to direct you wherever we need to direct you to the right people for your situation, that we'll be able to do that. And so we want to make sure that we don't leave today without making that clear, that there's help available. And so again, it's the musicstand.org. Joe Powell, his organization, I'm saying the short name, APAA, as well. And like I said, I'm excited. I'm really excited about that and everything that you share with us today, Joe. Kayla, did you have anything else you want to say or anything you want to interject?
Not really. I mean, I want to say thank you, Joe, for it was great to just see the path of recovery, you know, the power of it, and it's so great, you know, just to be able to, you know, resources for you know, the musicians and for communities like this to be able to help. It is, you know, I'll just say, you know, from my experiences, it is been in it, and you've been helping people for years, but it's just there's so many different various walks of life. It's easy to get stuck in a space, a negative, unhealthy mental health, and oftentimes there's not enough outlets, and there's not enough know that there are. You know, people just aren't aware. So yeah, I just want to say thank you, man. Thank you for sharing your story. It was incredible.
And healing, right, and recovery, right? There's the gospel, and all of the Christian paths. There's many paths. We honor all paths. We don't say that just, you know, because we know that God is covering us all. You know what I mean? So no matter what path we take. So, but it's great, yeah, to be. Thanks for sharing that. Mm-hmm.
Well, great. Well, thank you all. So we want everybody to get connected to us. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or however you're watching, make sure that you like our page, subscribe. This is just the beginning. We want to continue the conversation and continue to be a blessing to other people. And so we're thankful for everybody coming on today and for watching. So thank you, Hope. Thank you, Caleb. Thank you, Joe. This has been a great time, and I look forward to our next Life Notes for Professional Musicians. All right. Thanks again. We'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.